minute that we get 1 or 2 solar panels on the block, that's going to help everyone else on the block. And the more that we can see that functionality, see the impact now that you have money to spend on whatever your other home repair is, your entrepreneurial pursuits, or vacation, whatever you may do. Now you're no longer stressed with the energy burden that many of us always face.
I drive 2 hours, I can be at sand dunes on Lake Michigan. I drive 2 hours the other way, I can be on cliffs on Lake Huron. There are just like so many different environments in Detroit, and I think we should really highlight not just Michigan, but the way that these spaces extend from the city itself.
This is the Metro on 1019 WDET FM. Does it feel like you're waking up right now to a beautiful bird call? That is the sound of Michigan's state bird, the robin. And that's no pun intended for the robin that we have here on the Metro. But it's one of hundreds of North American bird species on the brink of extinction. And that's due to us, humans. Human-caused climate change and habitat destruction. Our human impact on nature is causing many birds to leave their homes and relocate to places more favorable for their species. And that's concerning because it's not just beauty and sweet songs that birds bring to the world. They also play a vital role in the ecosystem. They keep insect populations low. They help pollinate plants, and they disperse seeds. In other words, without birds, both people and the environment would experience devastating impacts. And right now, thousands of birds are migrating to Detroit from different places across the U.S. So we're going to take flight on this topic, and we have with us Ava Landgraf. She's with Detroit Bird Alliance, which works to protect birds and their habitats in the city of Detroit. Ava, welcome to the Metro.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I'm so happy to be here.
Yes. So starting with the basics, what is migration?
Migration is generally birds traveling from one place to another, usually following resources, following favorable temperatures, following food and resources. And there's short distance migrants to medium and long distance migrants for birds and other animals as well.
I was going to say, how far are we seeing the birds take flight across when they're migrating? Like you said, short distances or very long ones?
All different types right now, and we have birds traveling all the way from North America to South America. Fun one to highlight is hummingbirds travel over the Gulf of Mexico. We're going to call it that. Sorry. But just focus on the fact, it's really, really long distance for a tiny hummingbird to travel. I mean, that's crazy. Just amazing feats of resilience that these birds are doing every spring and fall.
And just to think that they are, like you said, from North to South America, that is no small feat for any creature.
Right. And tiny creatures going these like huge distances. It's crazy.
It is. So, as we continue to talk about just birds, migration, I know just learning about birds in general, the impact that humans have had on birds, whether it's from the buildings or our artificial lights that are on that distract them. So can you talk about some other ways humans have impacted birds in big ways?
Ooh, yeah. Well, the major issues, definitely habitat loss. I mean, that is the huge one there. And then generally after habitat loss, what we have to look at is unfortunately feral and outdoor cat populations, which is so complicated and sad and really just a difficult thing to talk about because we love cats, but I love cats. But they are amazing hunters and they do have a severe impact on birds and other wildlife. So I think just being aware of that is super important.
Ava, I love learning new things. That wasn't even in my mind to think about in terms of the bird population and our feral cat population, especially in Detroit. I know my apartment complex, there are at least 20 feral cats just kind of hunting and running around, and they keep the mice down, but they're also keeping the birds away. So that is very interesting. I didn't think about that. So as we're continuing to talk a little bit about birds and their migration patterns, I do want to ask you about when we are seeing those large flocks of birds that are flying above head and they're headed, maybe they're going to Canada or wherever they're maybe or staying here for a moment. Mm-hmm. Can we talk about just some of the larger patterns that we're seeing right now as we look up to the sky?
Yeah, I mean, there's like, I guess I'm picturing like the classic pattern of geese flying overhead.
That's who those are. That's who that is.
Yeah, when you see the V and you hear some of the honking, definitely have the geese flying over. And then we're also seeing those when you see like a large group of birds that are moving almost as if they're one giant organism. Yeah. That's called a murmuration. And those are commonly the European starling that we're seeing do that behavior, which is an amazing thing to see, and definitely see that in the sky over Detroit and Metro Detroit.
We're talking about birds in Southeast Michigan and the big impact humans have had on these little furious creatures, fiery creatures, excuse me. Mm-hmm. Our guest is Ava Landgraf, Detroit Bird Alliance Conservation and Research Coordinator. And we also want to hear from you. Do you have a favorite bird call? And which bird do you think should represent the city of Detroit? Give us a call, 313-577-1019. Honestly, if it were more appropriate, I think Robin and I would have done that for you all. But we are going to the phones right now. We have John on the east side with us. John, what's your favorite bird call?
Well, the harbinger of spring for me is the red-winged blackbird, because down here in Jefferson Chalmers, we have these amazing riverfront parks, and you can walk through them all through the dead of winter, and you really know spring is here when they arrive. And they just have some really peculiar and interesting bird calls for various things that they're doing. And they are a little aggressive. They have gone after me and my dog at times if you get a little too close to their nesting habitat.
And John, really quickly, when you hear the sound, what does it sound like to you? Can you do it?
No, I can't. And I'm outside, and actually, a goose just flew by and announced himself. But no, they sit up here in my tall trees and sing, though. But not on cue.
John, as always, thank you so much for calling the Metro. And Ava, can we talk a little bit about that particular bird he's talking about? Is it aggressive?
Definitely territorial. And aggressive, but only if you're getting close to its nest, which is tricky because they do like to commonly nest where people are close by. So many people have a story of a red-winged blackbird dive bombing them if they get too close to a nest. That's pretty common. But all you have to do is back up from the nest, and they're not gonna harm you. But yeah, very, very common. And red-winged blackbirds are really they come in the spring, and they have many different calls that are wonderful. And that's how you really know that spring is here. Many people associate that with robins, but robins are actually here year round.
Yes, Robin Vincent is. No, I'm kidding. But the bird, the state bird, is always here. But you said that red-winged blackbird is the true indicator of spring for Michiganders. Oh.
Yeah. There's a couple different bird species. Many different bird species that are only here in the summer. And red-winged blackbirds are just one of the most common, one of the birds that are found close to people. So yeah, that's one that we start seeing around April.
And Ava, in our next segment, we're going to talk more about just some of the species and just being a birder here in the city of Detroit. But I do want to stick with this particular troubled bird. Here. Let's get into the geese. You might be familiar with this sound. Personally, for me, that brings up personal terror because I went to Henry Ford Academy High School in Dearborn, and we often had to walk to our class, and we had to walk down a giant hill. It was by a pond. The geese would love to hang out by the pond, and we would get chased by the geese. Lots of backpacks swinging towards geese. So can we talk a little bit about geese and interacting with them and being around them, especially when we're in their space?
Right. Yeah. Very, very complicated topic. Definitely, I have a lot of people that like to ask me about this. And I am definitely of the opinion that they are still, amazing, beautiful creatures. And another territorial bird, another bird where if you get too close to the nest, they are going to be upset. And, I think of that. I'm like, wow, what good parents, like so nice. But I know a lot of people have issues with them. They're scared of them. They're annoyed by the poop. But it is tricky because geese like to live in and eat grass, like to eat turf grass. And we love putting turf grass everywhere. And so we are putting like a goose habitat everywhere, and then we're like, oh my god, there's so many geese, what a problem. Wow. And so it's just very funny to me. It's like, well, you put their habitat there. So it really is something that kind of by doing more, I like to push like a native plant garden, more like trees and shrubs and other things. You can kind of minimize that goose habitat, but I know that there are issues within parks and whatnot of overpopulations of geese and all of the goose poop that does accumulate with that. But I think that there are some like sensible solutions, reducing that goose habitat and trying to kind of discourage them from sticking around.
Ava, once again, learned something really, had no idea that we were actively planting their food of choice.
Yeah, they just stand around in the grass and pick at it all day and are having a great time. And plant something different and you'll have less geese.
Oh, my Lancer. So before we switch gears here, I do want to talk just generally as we segue here about some of the bird city parks that we have out there and some of the ways that we've seen these partnerships come together to make sure that we have spaces and places where we can actively enjoy bird watching and being a birder.
Yeah, Detroit Bird City Project. I have been working on this project with Detroit Bird Alliance since 2016. And it is a project where we partner with the City of Detroit, Parks and Recreation. We also partner with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and many community organizations to take some of the underutilized city parks and instead of putting all this money into them as a traditional park, turning them into a green space so that they function as a place for people to get outside as well as a habitat for birds and pollinators. And we do a lot of work connecting with the community, making sure it's something that they want. Then we plant a native flower meadow, which is the a habitat that birds really need right now. And then we put pieces like pathways and benches to kind of like invite people into the space. And then we stay in touch and do different programming such as like cleanups and bird walks, all of that good stuff. So it's an amazing project that I think is just like wonderful and how it just seems to kind of benefit everybody all around.
Ava, just listening to you speak right now, it's just like there are so many moving pieces that go into and people and entities and organizations and community partners that go into just keeping our environment and our species and our animals and the birds and ourselves safe and healthy. And so I'm thinking of just as we continue on thinking about the preservation of these spaces and what it looks like, especially as we're looking for solutions to some of the issues, the loss of habitat and everything things like that. Can you explain on that just a little bit more about how a person can take control of that?
Yeah, I am a huge advocate for using native plants at home. And native plants are kind of a tricky thing to define, but they're generally the plants that have evolved in a certain place for thousands of years, usually kind of without humans like transporting them or supporting them. And here in the U.S. and Michigan, we use a lot of European plants, and we're trying to get back towards using North American Michigan plants. And those plants support the insects that we have here that have adapted to using those plants. And then the birds really need those like healthy insect populations. So I'm a huge advocate for using those plants at home, not using pesticides or herbicides, and then creating these little pieces of habitat at home, at parks, wherever, so that they can kind of come together to form a larger habitat that birds really need to survive.
Yes, yes. And as you're listening, I know you're listening to the Metro right now, 1019 WDET FM. Give us a call and let us know some of your favorite bird calls or some of your favorite bird interactions, especially as we're starting to see the birds migrate into Detroit and into Michigan. That number is 313-577-1019. Right now, we are speaking with Ava Landgraf, Detroit Bird Alliance Conservation and Research Coordinator, and we will be right back with Ava in a moment. Coming up, we're going to continue that conversation about those birds and that chirping. And once again, 313-577-1019 is the number. Give us a call and let us know, what bird do you think should represent the city of Detroit? For me, I'm thinking it's a goose. But let us know. Stay right there on the Metro. We will be right back.
Nature is all around us. I think if everybody just looks out their window right now, notice how the everyday nature around you makes you feel, and people consistently write that, wow, I didn't realize there was so much nature around me. I'm surprised at how much better it made me feel.
We really believe in, if you're going to do something to a park, do it with those people who've been using it and advocating for it the whole time. So anytime we put programs in parks citywide, we always do it in partnership with park stewardship organizations, block clubs, churches. Like, hey, what are you guys looking for? And when do you want it? When doesn't conflict with stuff that you already have going on?
Everywhere you go in Detroit, somebody has reused something. You know, people look at Detroit and they see a city of ruins. And like, I don't see that. I see a place where I can take different things and create something really beautiful.
That is the song of the Blue Jay. Could you imagine a spring day in Michigan without bird songs? This is the Metro. I'm Robin Vincent. We know humans play a major role in protecting nature and animals, so we've been discussing some of the problems birds face in Southeast Michigan and how we can protect our winged friends. Now we want to take flight and land in your backyard, along with areas across Detroit where we can see many different kinds of birds. Our guest is Ava Landgraf. She's with Detroit Bird Alliance. It's working to protect birds and their habitats in Southeast Michigan. And we want to hear from you. Do you have a favorite bird call, perhaps one you can do? And which bird do you think should represent Detroit? Give us a call. The number is 313-577-1019. Let's listen to one more bird call. This is the herring gull. So we were just, that herring gull is loud. We were just talking about bird cities in Detroit parks. Those are outdoor public spaces that Detroit Bird Alliance is working to turn into bird habitats. Now, Ava, how can people create space for birds in their own homes, or if there's someone like me who lives in an apartment but is craving lots of bird songs and lots of bird action?
Yeah, kind of like I mentioned previously, the native plants are a great place to start, because kind of working from the bottom of that food chain, supporting the right plants supports the bugs and then the birds. And that is possible even at apartments. If you do have space to like a small balcony area, you can put certain plants that attract, support pollinators or even attract pollinating birds like hummingbirds. One of our board members puts out red plants because red is a color that is favorable to hummingbirds, and so she has hummingbirds that come to the balcony of her apartment. So even with a little space, you can put something there that brings these creatures in. And then it's also important if you're going to be putting things around your space like native plants or bird feeders that bring these creatures in, you have to make sure that you're also trying to prevent pieces that could harm them, such as outdoor cats, or another issue is windows, because birds do not see windows how we do, and that leads to the window and building collisions.
Yes.
So, putting out favorable things, trying to reduce harmful things, and then kind of creating habitat in that way.
One thing, back to the hummingbirds, because this is a very popular question, especially here at WDET among some of our staff. Is it any kind of red plant that will attract a hummingbird?
Definitely need to stick to, I would say stick to the native plants. They provide, they have evolved with the hummingbirds to provide the nutrients that they need. There are some non-native plants that they will go to, but I can see in my yard, I have a bunch of native plants and I see the birds and the bugs go to them. And then I've had a couple more decorative plants and just nothing touched them. They're just, they just feel so sterile because there's not other creatures here that interact with those plants. So some good red plants, there's wild columbine or cardinal flower. Those are great plants that you can plant at home, and then when they bloom, you can keep an eye out for hummingbirds.
Before we get to the phones, just very briefly here, Ava, you mentioned your backyard, and I am imagining that it is like a bird symphony, that you have just a lovely little ecosystem community of birds. Am I right?
It's a little small for that. I definitely have the different pollinating bugs coming in, a lot of bees and butterflies, which I am absolutely in love with. The backyard gets pretty crazy, but my front yard is looking nice. I hope my neighbors aren't too mad about it.
Let's go to the phones now. Bob in Detroit. What do you think Detroit's official bird should be?
Well, I have to say, Detroit is a magical place. And you see things in Detroit that you don't see anywhere.
Amen.
And I was absolutely astounded the first time I saw a pheasant in Detroit. And I've seen them a number of times. It's remarkable. Obviously, the open spaces in the city provide a habitat, but it's just a kind of magical bird. And when they take flight, they are powerful. I think the pheasant should be the bird for the city of Detroit.
Wow. Okay. Bob in Detroit, the pheasant is to represent the city because of its power and magic. Sally in Detroit, you also think the pheasant should be Detroit's bird. Is that right?
Yes, I do. And I, for the same reasons Bob was just describing. They're majestic. They just, you aren't expecting them, and then all of a sudden they're there, and beautiful birds. And it's something that Detroit has that not many other places have. So I think it represents Detroit nicely.
Sally, thanks so much for calling the Metro. And thank you, Bob, also for calling the Metro. Ava, I saw your eyes light up there. How do you feel about the pheasant becoming the bird of Detroit?
I think it's wonderful. I mean, it is a little bit interesting because the pheasant is not a native bird. It's actually a Eurasian species, but it was brought over here probably for hunting purposes and has just done an amazing job flourishing in Detroit. It's so unique to our city and really a bird that most Detroiters have a story about. And so we actually, one of our board members at Detroit Bird Alliance did a short documentary, little mini, called Pheasants of Detroit, all about pheasants and people's stories with them. And yes, they're so fun, especially when they do, they have kind of like a startle behavior. If they're they kind of like see you coming and you get too close, they'll jump out very suddenly and fly away, and it can be really startling. And they're purposely loud and flap around and fly off quickly, and you're just so stunned for a second. That's how the bird would get away from you if you were a predator.
Bob and Sally, if you two have not seen the pheasants of Detroit, it sounds like some essential viewing for you both. Now, Ava, what about birds that are native to Michigan? What are some of your favorites?
Oh, well, my favorite bird, I have to say, well, it's actually not native also, but my favorite bird is the pigeon. I think that it's remarkable and just how resilient that bird is as well. They're beautiful to me, and they're really smart, even though people don't think they are, but they have an amazing sense of direction that I don't have, and I'm really jealous.
Can you do a pigeon coo?
No.
Okay. All right. I bet one of the people on the line holding and waiting patiently is going to be ready to do that pigeon coo for us. Some of us have considered robins a sign that spring is here, and you mentioned earlier that this is not an accurate bellwether. Why is that, and what birds are a truer sign of spring?
Yeah, we were talking earlier robins are actually a short distance migrant. And there's actually kind of different robins here in the summer versus winter. And they do kind of travel, but we do have robins here in the winter, but they're doing different behaviors. They're more out foraging in kind of smaller groups, maybe more in more like forested areas looking for food. And then in the spring, they kind of disperse and gather. They have different they kind of grab their territory for breeding, and then they're out, at the top of the trees singing. And so we just notice them so much more in the spring, but they actually are here year round.
In the last 30 seconds that we have here, tell me, what are the benefits you find with birding? Does birding help you?
Birding, I think, is an amazing mindfulness practice, and that's really what a lot of people are finding and trying to push lately. Instead of birding being so much of a competition of like, oh, I've seen this bird, I've seen this many birds, really just taking it as a way to slow down and connect with nature and appreciating all of the birds, all of the behaviors. Even if you don't know the name, just being able to appreciate them can really bring a sense of peace and wonder.
Ava Landgraf is with Detroit Bird Alliance. It works to protect birds and their habitats in Southeast Michigan. Ava, thanks so much for joining us on the Metro.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Metro is hosted by Robin Vincent and Tia Graham. The show is produced by Sam Corey, Kerry Jr. II, and Jack Philbrand. Our senior producer is David Lyons. Our engineer is Nate Bender. Music and creative audio production by Sam Bobian. The Metro is a production of WDET, a listener-supported service of Wayne State University. This is 1019 WDET-FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation.